Greetings everyone, I am Dr. Wolf out here in the very arid landscape of southern Utah, and while I was out here I thought I'd give a short little talk about how I drove a junker car for over 9 years, and that went a very long way in helping to keep me out of debt. Much of the world today, especially the first world countries, believe that it is absolutely crucial that you have your own car in order to get through everyday life. And certainly to an extent, that is true. In a lot of places, in order to get to your daily job and still be in an affordable home, you kind of have to live several miles away at least from where you work. So you're either taking the bus, you're taking the train, or you're saving yourself a lot of time by having your own car. In many cases it does make sense, but at the same time I'm not entirely sure why so many people, especially in America, have become obsessed with the idea that having a car, especially a new car, is so critical to making you feel independent, to making you feel like you've made it in the world, to making you feel like I'm successful. So much about having a new car just puts you in this perpetual trap of debt that can last decades. And let me tell you what I mean by that. When I was going through college, I didn't have a car. I would walk everywhere. Even to the grocery store, I would walk about 1.5 miles just carrying my groceries by hand back to my apartment. And yeah, it was time consuming, but it certainly saved a lot of money in the long run. But when I was getting close to graduating, my parents thought it was time. My father in particular, who's been kind of a car nut his whole life, he felt it was absolutely necessary that I find myself a car. And they did manage to track down, at that time, a pretty old vehicle. This was back in 2005, and I think it was a 92 Geo Prism. So that would have been a 13-year-old vehicle at the time, with 208,000 miles on it. It was pretty beat up. Looking at it from the outside, the paint was peeling everywhere. On the inside, the chair fabric was full of holes. The ceiling fabric was coming down. You had to put push pins into it to keep it from coming apart all over the place. The radio was inoperative. There were a bunch of things that really needed fixing up, but it was functional. And with some repairs here and there, and if I could get used to the fact that yes, it was a very old car, and yes, it wasn't all that comfortable, and yes, it did not look that great, it could get me to where I needed to go. And I was able to pay for it without going into debt. It was only $2,000, meaning that I didn't have to get into a monthly payment plan in order to buy it. And I could get insurance that was the most basic of insurance. So if I ever got into an accident, I'd never be able to replace the car. It would only pay for damages to any other vehicle involved. So, cheapest of the cheap. But I was able to maintain the lowest amount of expenses involved with it. And being a recent college graduate, yeah, it was pretty much all I needed. I got my start in my accounting career less than a year after that, and within a few years people started telling me, you know, you have your career now, you have stable income, why not get a decent car? Why are you still driving this old junker? And I kept thinking to myself, is that really necessary? I mean, The car still works, gets me to where I need to go. I know it doesn't look great. It's not all that comfortable, but is it really important for me to get a newer car, start making monthly payments just because it's not that comfortable? Just because I want it to look better? Just because I want some more modern amenities? I kept running the numbers. For the amount of money it would take to buy a car that was even just a few years old and keep replacing with another car every few years, it could keep me perpetually paying debt for decades to come. Rather, instead, if I were to save my money every month instead of paying it on a mortgage plan and keep driving this old junker car, I could buy another car when that time came and never have to go into debt, never have to pay that interest, never have to deal with, am I gonna have enough to cover the bills this month kind of feeling. And yes, there were certain things that went wrong with that old junker car. I'd have to replace standard things like oil changes, new tires, the brakes would wear out, and then bigger things like left front axle that completely wore out. There was one point where, driving on a long trip, the radiator just completely died on us and the whole engine started smoking on the highway. And that was a little scary, but you know, we were able to fix it and it wasn't that bad. I don't think there was ever a point where I ever had to pay more than a few $100s just repairing and maintaining that car. And compared to spending a couple $100s per month on, say, a payment plan on a newer vehicle, plus a greater amount of money on yearly insurance, because with a newer car you want better insurance, right? It just didn't make sense to me. Year after year I just kept driving this old junker car because, you know what? I'm okay with that. I don't need to have those modern amenities. I don't need to have that comfort. And 9.5 years and getting that car up to nearly 260,000 miles, it was still running. It was still functioning. Believe it or not, this little car still had some life left in it. And you know what? When I finally decided, okay, I have money saved away, I think it's time to trade up. I was able to buy a 7-year-old vehicle with only about 60 some odd thousand miles on it, and I bought it with cash. No payment plan needed. All because I had stuck with a junker car for so long just to get me where I needed to go. And that consistent little discomfort of being in those seats with holes in them and the poor paint job that kept getting worse over the years and not having a functioning radio, it's something you can get used to. And because I was able to stay out of debt, out of those car payment plans, and never, ever have to pay a car payment for the rest of my life, that is another step that has allowed me to have financial independence. A very important step in my opinion. I hope that people who decide, yes, it is necessary to have a vehicle, will remember that despite every single commercial telling them otherwise, it is not necessary for you to have something new, for you to have something modern, for you to have something that will be comfortable. All you really need is it reliable? Is it efficient? Is it safe? And how much does it cost? That's all that really matters. Those are my thoughts anyways. But what do you guys think in regards to having your own vehicle and maintaining a debt-free lifestyle. Are junker cars worth it? Until next time, I am Dr. Wolf, and I look forward to hearing from you.